All right, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Welcome to Muslim Network TV. This is your host for Canada Today, Youth Edition, your host, Muhammad Maxwell Hassan. Now, you may have heard of the phrase, a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? You've heard that, you've seen it. And this whole world that we're living in, it's all picture focused. Instagram, you got to get the gram, you got to get that $1 million snapshot. But as they say, with a picture being worth 1,000 words, how many of us can actually write 1,000 words? And that's just what we're going to be talking about today. It's all about the writing component. Even in our deen, it's built into it, right? The very first command was iqra, read. So we got to read and write as well. So it's all built, it's intertwined, but how come, this whole world of writing kind of gets swept under the carpet or just not talked about enough? I mean, we send texts to one another, yes. We write Facebook posts, yes, but how many of us actually take the time to write meaningfully and in a more meaningful way? And so with us here, they got two very special co-guests in order to dive into this whole topic of writing. With us here today is, mashallah, brother Amir Husseini. Amir is born and raised in Brampton, Ontario. Again, shout out to Brampton. He's passionate about education. That's an understatement of the century. Really, really passionate about it, and has a hard time ever really leaving school. And little fun fact for you all, mashallah, him and I are high school buddies. We've actually known each other beyond high school, before that as well. But education's really gotten into this. He enjoys cooking, sports, and has a healthy obsession with board games, well beyond Monopoly and Scrabble, although those are great as well. And of course, Amir enjoys reading and writing. And although he says he's not very good at the latter, meaning writing, he continues to do so as a daily hobby for his own mental health. Again, there's so many things. We can dive into that a bit more, how writing actually soothes and is pretty therapeutic in a way. So, mashallah, brother Amir, thank you so much for stopping by. Really looking forward to seeing your thoughts. And with us here today as well is Sister Saliha Bakht. She got her foot in the door in writing when her second grade teacher published a poetry piece of hers nationally, nearly 2 decades later. So, time flies when you're having fun. She messaged an author as a fan. And that author just so happened to own a publishing company, and Saliha submitted her first piece of publication there in 2019. It saw publication in 2020. I know that 2020 is a year that people have mixed feelings about, but hey, it's a win for her. And Saliha started her editing certification in 2020 as well, and was promoted to head editor of My Voice magazine. She got her idea for a Muslim adult publishing company a month or two later, and has been spending 2021 as a trial year of what Muslim fiction for adults could look like. Thank you, Sister Saliha, as well, for stopping by. Definitely have a wealth of knowledge in terms of the editing world. You got it's a very experimental, I would say, like the last 2-3 years. But we're going to dive more into this whole world of writing. So let's go ladies first. Sister Saliha, mashallah, you got promoted to being the head writer, or head editor, I should say, of My Voice magazine. And now you're thinking about starting your own publishing company. So definitely you're no stranger to writing. So could you, for the benefit of the viewers, could you kindly share a little snapshot, like why writing? Why did you get into it? How did you get into it? As an editor, as someone who is writing in fiction, or what have you. I mean, if you can give us a taste of that, I think the audience would appreciate kind of what angle you're coming from.
Assalamualaikum. Thank you for having me. I think I had a little bit of writing in every grade of education. I remember junior kindergarten, we had to take a book to the classroom and read it to the class. And my mom told me afterwards, I didn't read it to the class. I had it memorized, and I recited it to the class, and I pointed to the words as I remembered my parents pointing them to me. And then after that, it's like a series of spelling bees. And like you said, my second grade teacher took a poem that I wrote in class, along with most of my classmates as well, and she sent it to a anthology to be published with other people my age, and also in elementary school. And the year after that, it was a class project to write a story in class. The year after that, there was another class project to write a story in class. So writing has always sort of been there. And then I got my start editing because I wrote so much that I knew, or I read so much, I knew what I was talking about when I could tell other people what their essays should be like. Um, and I read so much that I could tell people what their stories should be like. So alhamdulillah, I've been editing articles and essays and full-length novels for a couple of years now. Um, and that's really how I got my foot in the door in terms of the literary field.
Wow, mashallah, I can imagine, in second grade, you probably were like, how did you take it? I
I
mean,
didn't know. I think the
okay.
teacher sent my mom a permission slip. It was like, "Would you be okay if your daughter showed up in a book?" And my mom would have signed it, and then the next thing I know, I had a hard copy book, and my mom was like, "Look, this is you." I'm just like, "No, how did they get it?" She's like, "No, this is you." Like, how did they get the poem though? Like,
Look at that. It all
I
happened
wasn't
so
really
fast.
expecting it.
It must have happened so fast. It was a blur, but hey, that probably was your first, moment, and one thing led to another, and here you are. I guess you just couldn't escape writing. It just was built into you
Alhamdulillah,
from
yeah,
day.
it seems to be
Alhamdulillah.
the way it's going.
Very cool, mashallah. So let's transition over to Brother Amir, my man. I know little quick story. I want to share a quick story with the audience, with you, Aven. It's like, Amir, I can tell you, like with English class particularly, man, this guy really, like, he really sunk his teeth into whatever books that we were into, essay writing. Like sometimes I know some people in our class, they usually shy away from English. Oh, great, it's English class. No disrespect, it is what it is. But mashallah, Amir, you kind of really, really went into it full force, and like you didn't shy away from it. It was something you really got into. Tell us about how writing entered your life. Was it something as early as second grade, like Sister Saliha? Was it, or was it something you eventually grew into it? So if you can give us in a nutshell how writing affected your life, I think the audience can really benefit from it.
Of course. First off, assalamu alaikum, everyone. Jazakallah khair, Mohammed, for having me. I really appreciate you letting me sit here and share my experiences. By no means am I an expert. I did my best to sink my teeth into any of the literature, etc., that we were studying in school. Um, it's hard for me to really point and say that this is when writing became a key part to my life. I feel like it's a part of life, especially living here in the Western world. We're exposed to it constantly. Um, where it really began to hit home for me was actually during those high school years, many years ago. I found that being able to write it's a form of expression, right? And being able to write creatively is also a form of expression, which allows us to. I think it's T.S. Eliot that says that writing is almost an overflowing of emotion, right? So like with any hobby or pastime, whether it's sports, baking, some of the things that I do, and multitude that others take part in, what I kind of like to say is that writing allows that as well. It's an outlet of some in some way, shape, or form. So being a angst-filled teen in high school, etc., I found that writing really helped me kind of process and understand things that I would have to deal with in class and just life in general. So although I would say I'm an amateur, writing is not meant for only professionals. It's something that I recommend everyone does because I really believe that it helps filter and process different thoughts and really ground ourselves in our days as well. So I'm not sure if I answered it as well as possible, but I like to say that writing is not just a hobby, but it's something that can be really meaningful when people really want to write. And I encourage everyone to write as well. You can ask my students.
That's amazing, man. So like, yeah, writing is a lifelong journey. It's not like you reach a certain point and you're like, all right, I've reached everything there is to reach, and I've climbed that mountain, and here I am, and I'm now at the peak of it. So it's a continuous process. And I really like what you're saying in terms of how writing was an outlet or a form of expression that really kind of organizes your thoughts. I think there's a relationship between thinking and writing. We can dive a bit more into that, but let me continue on with you, Amir, because nowadays when you say, okay, let's just say take an average Muslim youth, particularly high schoolers. Mashallah, as an educator, I think you've had your fair share of experiences with this. Now, you take an average Muslim boy, Muslim girl, and you bring out a whole, all right, write a 500-page report, write a 3-page, like a 1,000-word essay. Here come the groans, here come the moans, here comes all this thing. Talk to us, man. In your general, from your point of view, from your experiences, based on what you've seen and heard and know, how do Muslim youth look at writing? If writing is such an important and crucial skill, what's going on? What do you make of it so far? I mean, what's your take on this?
So this is a really interesting question, and I could probably talk about it for a very long time. So I'll do my best to be as brief as possible. But I have a lot of experience with Muslim youth in the humanities or in English class with writing, etc. Right, and I find that everyone often they shy away a little bit from English courses or just writing in general. But it's because they acknowledge that it's difficult, right? And I'm not here to say that it's easy, because writing is a difficult task. Communicating in general, I think part of life, communication is key, regardless of where you are. So I think part of bringing them in, and what I try to do when I teach about writing, is you want to empower students. You want to empower them to and understand that they have a voice, and they also have stories and experiences to share that other people can benefit from. We all have our stories, we all have our lives, we all have our experiences. Inshallah, we all learn something from them as well, right? So I think it's about to engage writers is to make sure that writers know that they have something to share. And that kind of, it goes hand in hand with, I mentioned empowering them, just empowering students, empowering kids, empowering you to understand that their thoughts matter. And you kind of mentioned at the beginning, Mohammed, that thinking and writing kind of go hand in hand. And they very much do, right? Because you have to process some thoughts to be able to put them on the page. We can talk about the writing process, but I don't know if anyone wants an English lesson here. But there has to be some thought that's put into writing. And when people really engage with it, I find it's because they connect with it. And that's because they see themselves almost in their writing. So if that makes sense, with Muslim youth, you want them to see themselves in their writing. You want them to see that what they have to say matters. Hopefully that.
Very cool. So yeah, it's really neat. So at least as a starting point, they acknowledge that it's difficult. So that's good news. I mean, in a way, that it's not easy. You just copy and paste, and that will, nice big plagiarism. Stamp right there. It's easier now, more than ever, right? Just here's an article, and then that's that. No, man. Like, if you want to have genuine, authentic, so there you go. So on the one side, it's like they acknowledge it's difficult, great. On the other side, mashallah, I think it's that whole empowering and really letting them know, shining a light on them, and have that spotlight to say, look, what you say matters, but how you articulate it is equally as important. Very cool. So Sister Saliha, let's take it to you. Based on your experiences, are we barking up the wrong tree if we say that, Muslim youth in general just, they're not really into it? Or have you found the opposite? Have you found tons of writers that they just love it, they relish it, and maybe it's just some undiscovered territory? I don't know what to say. So what do you make of it? What would you say are some observations based on your experience with how Muslim youth look at writing?
I think what Brother Amir said was correct. Like, writers especially need to know that what they have to write matters and what they have to communicate matters. Alhamdulillah, so the magazine that I volunteer with has its share of submissions for the editing cycle. And I think, alhamdulillah, this cycle, what it showed was that we have a lot of very smart and well-articulated youth who really just are looking for a way to get their ideas out there, a funnel, a medium, something that says, we have people who want to listen to your ideas. We have people interested in what you want to say. So it's like the theme this cycle is passing the torch. And what we found was that all of our submissions are very serious. They're all with ideas of connecting one generation to the other, of carrying on the different fights that they see in society that are happening, of different ways to continue. And what came out in the end was that we didn't have enough lifestyle pieces, the lighter pieces, to really just sort of break up the magazine. We didn't have enough of the creative writing pieces and the recipes and like those things, because everything was very serious. So I think what we found with most of our contributors are in high school, university, and they've even graduated. And I think what we found is that they're very smart and they're very well articulated and they have so much to share. And they really just want to know that if they write this, will somebody take responsibility for making sure that it gets read? If they write this, if they spend the time to communicate, is there going to be somebody on the other end to listen to them, to receive what they're trying to say, to read what they have to say, to actually incubate those ideas even further, to take it a step further? So I think that's what I'm finding with youth and the way that they involve themselves in the magazine. They just want to be heard and they want an audience.
Man, that's intense. I don't know what to say, man. I gotta tell you, like it sounds like a lot of the youth are just, they got this pent up thing and they have to just, but that's interesting. I thought, I guess it goes against perhaps the common misconception. Oh, the youth are generally lazy, or this generation is all about fun and TikTok and all that sort of stuff.
They're
that celebrity
on TikTok, but they're so smart at the same time. When they bounce ideas off of each other and they get feedback that's in a positive direction, even if they're on TikTok, like TikTok doesn't, social media doesn't mean anything bad. It can be a really good way to grow.
But like, I'm gonna put you on the spot here. Like, was there any piece that really stuck out to you that really resonated and you're like, wow, this is hard hitting? Like when you're mentioning that the pieces are kind of, I don't want to say taking a darker turn, but they really are pretty, mature in nature. Like, what are some examples of things that people talk about? And is there one that really caught your eye?
It's not really that they're turning darker, it's that they acknowledge that like our submissions, you only have a maximum of 500 words. So it's really, it's not that they're going darker, it's that they know that they need to make these 500 words count. And they want to write to those 500 words and they want to say, okay, I acknowledge my reader's time is valuable. I'm going to make sure these 500 words count. And I remember there is this one article last cycle about a Muslim youth. I think she was a hijabi in Toronto. And during COVID, she had started up her own volunteer organization to get underfunded athletes the funds that they needed to continue with their athletic programs during the school year if they couldn't afford it, or during COVID if they couldn't afford it. And her article was all about that initiative she took, the response that she got, how it benefited, what the payoff was. And I think not only does that one show that you have a youth that's willing to write and it's willing to communicate to other people and give them hope, but two, that you have a youth that's willing to solve a problem that they see, that a youth that has initiative to solve problems in their community. And it's a youth that has, here, let me help you solve your own problem in your own community. Let me help you take it a step further. This is what I did in my community. If what I have to share helps, I want to see you do that in yours. And alhamdulillah, like, that's one of the articles that I remember the most, because she was so forthcoming about what she had experienced and the difficulties that she faced to get there, to get to the point of helping other youth in her community.
That's amazing, Spawn. There's something else I want to talk about with regards to the article, and maybe because we're living in this digital world, is there space for writing in this? But we'll get to that. But Amir, let me bounce it back to you. In terms of like, we talked about challenges in terms of piece. Was there a piece or a short story or a novel or something that you've read? I'm curious that really resonated with you. So that way people can really, I guess, how do I say, it can really come to life, like the idea that, hey, if I read this paragraph or I read this novel or I read this, it really changes people and it's a real visceral reaction. Because nowadays, I think it's hard to picture it. People, they say, I watched this movie and it changed my life. And it's easy because you can see it, you visualize, you hear it, you can sense it. But when you're reading something, it's just very intimate, you and the material. has there been something like that in your experience, or things that you've seen that, you know, with among the youth that you worked with, where an article literally changed or impacted, similar to what Sister Saliha mentioned, that kind of moved and
That's an awesome question. And if it's okay, I'm going to share two examples because two things pop into my mind. One of them is a short story that I actually teach. And I teach it to both of these actually are things that I teach to grade 12 classes, but they can be read by anyone, and I recommend that anyone reads them as well. One of them is it's a short story called A Pair of Silk Stockings by Kate Chopin. And Mohammed, you might remember this. We actually studied this when we were back in high school. But this is an outstanding story that takes place in the early 1900s, I believe, about a housewife that does so much work and that just needs a break, right? And I think it says it resonates so much with life even today in 2021, which is really amazing. And you know, I won't go too deep into it because, you know, this is not a lesson on Kate Chopin. But the second example, and this is one, I felt like I was late to the boat with this book because I've always heard The Alchemist, The Alchemist, The Alchemist. And finally one day I picked up and I read it and I was like, oh goodness, mashallah, like I need to teach this book. And I remember walking into my at that time my vice principal's office and saying, "Hey, I want to change the book that we do in grade 12 because I feel like this tells us so much about life, so much about our attitude when we face difficulties and so on." So I just felt it was so relatable, not only for me, but especially for kids that are 16, 17, 18 that are thinking about making decisions, that are coming that are facing obstacles in life and learning how to kind of manage them. This story it chronicles a boy named Santiago. I'll give you a little bit of a synopsis, if that's okay. It chronicles the story of a boy named Santiago and his search for treasure. And through his journey, he has so many obstacles and faces so many different perils. But he's always got this very steadfast attitude, right? And it made me think a lot about Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and just being able to forge forward, to continue to work, and to understand that there's a plan out there for me, right? And I'm reading this story, and it's a non-Muslim character, but he's in the Muslim world, which as well. But he's showing us, you know, things that are important for us and to understand that there's a plan for us and we can continue going. It's okay. I just thought it was a very powerful novel, and I wanted kids to read it because I felt like they would really, really benefit from it. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but a lot of the students that do read it, they end up saying, "Sure, this was a great choice," especially in grade 12, because they're then transitioning from like grade 12 to university, and that's a big jump for you, or college, or you know, the workplace. So just this book, I felt like it is very relatable, and it's something that I find that youth really, really resonate with. In my experience, and I would definitely recommend anyone that hasn't read it to definitely read it. I actually reread it just a couple months ago, but fantastic novel.
Man, Amir, mashallah, The Alchemist is something that I guess maybe this is the breaking point for me. Like I gotta push through. I'm also late to the boat. I've heard a lot of great things about it. Looks like I gotta sit down and actually read. But I want to talk a little bit about what happened just now. Mashallah, Amir, you see, you know, I'm sure a lot of the viewers can see this as well, like how the energy, just when you're talking about it, and it just brings it to life. You know, it's almost, I know people, they have the same passion when they're talking about their favorite video game, their favorite movie. So I want to dive into this part. And again, Sister Saliha, I'd love to hear your take on this too. So Amir, like when people read, like, how do you, I guess, get to that level where it's like it speaks to you, and especially if it's just words on a page, versus again, when you have a video game, it's very interactive. It's obvious. So when people love Mario, Zelda, you have a really fan base, or you have Star Wars and all these things in the movie. It's very easy to see why people can get attached to it. When it comes to a book and it comes to reading, especially in 2021, since the whole world is pretty much visual, like, is there a place for it? Like, what's going on there? How do you keep that bond intact with words if there's no images to accompany it?
Of course, I think that's a very personal question, actually. Not for me in general, but I mean just for the audience as a whole, right? Because reading it, we live in a world where we can go to Google, we can type something, and it comes up right away, right? We live in a world with instant gratification. We have things that are very easily accessible. With a book, with reading, you kind of have to sit down and do the work, right? But it's not necessarily work. I get excited about reading. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm excited about every book, because there are books that maybe, they aren't necessarily my cup of tea. But that being said, I think just engaging and being happy about reading or enjoying the things that we read, it's all about picking a book that, as an individual, you truly want to sit down and immerse yourself into it, right? And I always say that when we pick up a novel, and even when we watch a movie or we watch a television show, we suspend some type of belief. And when I say we suspend our belief, it means that if we're reading The Alchemist, or if I'm reading The Alchemist, or let's say I'm watching a movie like The Lion King with my nephew, we know lions do not talk, right? But for that moment, we allow it to happen because we want to learn something from it, or we want to enjoy something from what we are viewing, from what we are consuming. Same thing happens with novels, and it's about, all right, let's sit down and let's think about what we're reading, because I think that part of it. Oh man, I have no idea where this came from, but wow. What I think with reading is, or anything we do in life, to be quite honest, as Muslims, is there's nothing that happens based on luck or circumstance. Everything is carefully planned in our own stories, right? We all have our own stories. Our pages have been written for us by the best planners, by our creator, right? Understanding that, when we read, we can think about, all right, what can I now glean from what I'm reading, from what I'm writing? And it connects to writing in a bit, and I'll share that later if you like. But just having the attitude of, when I pick up a book, there's something in here for me, right? And it might not be apparent for everyone, but there's definitely something in here for me. And something that I found have been popping up more, and that I've been taking more, I've been kind of a part of more often lately, especially in this COVID world, is book clubs. Virtual book clubs happen where every week you meet, you read a couple pages, and then you talk about it. Reading is personal, but it's also a communal act, right? So it's really important to sit down and think about what you've read. But I think you can really learn a lot about life in unexpected ways by just talking to people about the things that you actually consume and read as well. So, you know, I feel sad to think that maybe people don't read as often as they used to. But I'm happy to know that people still do read books and they enjoy them. And I've had discussions with students, with youth as well, where they really connect with what they read and they learn a lot from it as well.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. So it's like when you have that mindset of, this book is, there's something in it for me. There's a treasure waiting to be discovered. When you go into it, imagine that mindset when we read the Quran. I mean, you have all these amazing books. You have Shakespeare. You have all these amazing authors throughout history, but none can compare with the creator, right? Like the ultimate book. So, but Sister Saliha, I want to take it to you in terms of this whole dichotomy of visual world versus written world. And you know what I mean? Like it's maybe tougher to get people to get excited about the whole written world. What's your take on this particular aspect?
I've read, or I've seen more movies that were based off of books than I've read books that are based off of movies. So books are, yes, a very 2D sort of thing. There's no picture along with it, but it is a starting point. And I think, like Brother Amir said, books are good for communication. They need to know, the writers need to know that their message matters. So with any book, it's just the beginning of a very long conversation. Where is this book going to go? Is it going to become a movie? Is it going to become a TV show? Is it going to influence how this person behaves for the rest of their life? Yes, I still think reading is relevant in a world that's largely digital and, as you said, visual. Reading, it's timeless. It's the first stories that are recorded are told verbally. They're passed on verbally as well. It's one person. They had these in African villages and tribes, but it's one person who will collect all the stories that happen within the village or tribe over generations, and every new generation, that same person will sit down and he or she will recite all of those stories to the next generation in hopes of finding the person who will continue to carry those stories on to the next generation after them. And I think that's a beautiful thing, and it also tells us that the value of stories and communication, not just in a visual way. It's not like that person was acting out the stories that they wanted to pass on. They were telling the stories that they wanted to pass on, and they were saying there's something here to be learned from them. And just that thing of reading, and when people are saying that printed books are dying out, that things should all go digital. It wasn't that things should all go into the movie sphere or the film sphere or the short film sphere. It wasn't that everything should be recorded digitally. They came out with ebooks and they came out with e-readers, specifically e-readers. You couldn't read a book on a TV. Books weren't sold on DVD. They came out with e-readers because reading will always be relevant. And it still holds its own against an entire film industry.
Man, I think that the first sentence you mentioned, like I've seen, or there are movies based on books rather than books based on, like that was just a little mic drop right there, just a little attack on it. But I hear you loud and clear, mashallah. But again, reading is timeless, writing is timeless. It has had its place, it is having its place, and it will always have its place. It's just a matter of how we use it. Now, I'm gonna still continue with you, Sister Saliha, because nowadays people think, maybe, I mean, a good portion, don't want to paint everyone with the same brush. Maybe a good chunk of people think that in order to become a journalist, all I got to do is get a paper and pen and boom, just start writing. As long as I can string words together, I'm a writer. I got a laptop, I got my keyboard, that qualifies me to be a keyboard warrior, as they say, right? So, Sister Saliha, when it comes to writing, what are some pitfalls? What are some misconceptions? What are some traps that you would caution people if someone wants to say, wake up one day with the epiphany of saying, you know what, I've been blessed with the writing gene and I'm going to write until my last breath? What would you caution this individual in terms of getting into the writing world?
I don't know that I would caution anything. I think, like Brother Amir said, writing is difficult in the first place. So when somebody's taking on such a difficult endeavor, there's nothing to really caution them about. It's, yes, do write, go. And as they write more, they will learn, grow, and practice and become better writers. So the only pitfall, I suppose, would be letting them think that they could get their first written work published. I don't know anybody necessarily that good, whoever got their first diary entry published. But the thing of writing just being difficult, I think you can always start by writing a diary entry or a journal entry, or if you don't feel comfortable writing about yourself, write about the people that you're watching walk their dog on the street, write about the people that you see at the mall. Just people watch and write what you think they're talking about because you can't hear them, and what you think they're doing or what you think they're gonna do when they get home. Oh, this person's eating an apple. What does that mean? So all of those things to make writing more enjoyable for you, because yes, you do. I agree with Brother Amir again that you do need to engage writers. So write what's interesting for you, write what you know, and also just practice. And the same for everything. Practice makes perfect, inshallah. So there's another pitfall actually that comes up, is that some readers will think that everything that there is to be written has already been written. And some writers will think that everything there is that can be published has already been published. And to an extent, I do agree that that's true. There are so many hundreds and hundreds of articles written on how to change a light bulb. So yes, whatever can be published is probably already published. But I think it's also important to remember that the specific way that you say things, the perspective that one writer can provide on a situation could be the perspective to change somebody else's life. Maybe a dozen articles on how to change a light bulb, maybe there's somebody who's electrically inept and just does not understand the instructions. But maybe your written piece, your written contribution to that collection of articles on how to do the same thing on a topic that has already been written on, maybe your piece can be that one different communicated medium to make a difference in somebody's life. So even if everything's already been said and everything's already been written, it hasn't been written your way.
Look at that. Masha, I guess if I can draw an analogy, it's almost like you get two different math teachers, same subject, right? Trigonometry, Pythagorean theorem. One person explains it, it's like, from outer space. The second person explains it, but it's just like music to your ears. Is that right? So like you can have the same topic, on the same, situation, but yet your, words and your perspective really clicks with certain people, and it could be the difference maker. That's awesome. I guess that defeats the whole. That's such a cool. It's such a eye-opening perspective. It's Masha, if you just type in anything on Google, you get millions of searches. So you're like, oh, what's the point? Why bother? Pick a topic, any topic, changing light bulbs, changing, I don't know, stuff. That's really cool, but the fact that yours hasn't been published yet just adds to that collection. Very
Perspective
cool.
really does matter. Perspective can speak to so many people, and perspective is valuable.
SubhanAllah, Muhammad, sorry, I was gonna use the exact same analogy that you just used.
For a math class, that really
no, just teachers. You can have a teacher in one class, another class, and one of them you can hear more clearly, and the other one you can't. And it's all about how do you connect, who do you connect with. So things can be said. We're teaching the same English curriculum for God knows how long, but you hear certain ways of communication better than others. That's not to say one is better or worse. It just means that your perspective, like you mentioned, is perspective really matters. Sorry, Mom.
It clicks. And so I'm going to take it to you, Amir. That's a perfect segue into what are some pitfalls that you found? People, again, you don't want to, set them up like a volleyball, right? You throw them, and then you spike it down in terms of people getting excited and saying, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to be the next J.K. Rowling. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to be that one-hit wonder. I'm going to make my millions off royalties with my book, and everyone's going to, and it's going to turn into a movie, and then I'm going to be a movie star. I'm going to be the next Stephen King, you know what I mean? Like, so I guess I'm prefacing all this by asking you, like, what would you say are some of the pitfalls or misconceptions out there for someone who's looking to, dabble in the writing world?
Of course. I think this is like, there's a lot of different things I could say about this. I feel like I can say a lot of things about many different things, subhanAllah. But I want to start by saying I'm gonna refer to another Disney movie. As you can see, I'm a big fan of animated film. But in the movie Ratatouille, they say anyone can cook, and what I say is anyone can write as well, right? The number one pitfall I find is that people want to do it perfectly. And Mohammed, you say something that I think is very, very important, and this is something I share with students now, mashallah, is that done is better than perfect, right? A lot of times when when I see students write, they're aiming for perfection, they're aiming for everything right, to everything to be done correctly. And I've fallen victim to this as well. I've attempted to write a book. I got like 70 pages in. I was like, nope, this is not good anymore, and I trashed it. And I think an important thing, remedy over here, is that we need to remember that writing is a process, right? Writing is a process, and it has multiple steps to it. And what makes it difficult, it's simple, but it's also difficult at the same time. I know I might not be making any sense. It's simple in that we're communicating our thoughts, we're writing things down. It's difficult because there are a lot of rules in the English language, in any language. But it's difficult because of the process. We need to start by brainstorming. We make an outline, then we make a draft, then we revise and we edit, and we revise and we edit, and we continue doing that until we feel like we're at a position where we're very comfortable with our work. What makes it difficult, the pitfall I see is, and we can blame whatever we want here, but we're used to, as I mentioned earlier, instant gratification, right? So it's kind of a matter of taking time and care and allowing yourself to go through the process of revising and then making changes, and then revising again and then making changes, and then editing and then making changes, and editing again, making changes, and being able to go back and forth. That's how you become a professional writer. But at the same time, I don't want to say that writing is only meant for professional. I'm far from a professional writer, right? But I write daily, and I think it's very important, and I think it's a task, or not necessarily a task, but something that's very beneficial for anyone and everyone. And that's to say that writing is not just for those that want to publish things. It's for the everyday person. It's for your average Joe, your average Amir like me, right? So anyone can write, anyone should write, and it's all about, like I mentioned earlier, an overflow of emotions. It doesn't necessarily have to be an overflow, but share your stories. We talked a little bit about storytelling. Storytelling is so beneficial for everyone. We all love stories. We all enjoy listening to stories, hearing about stories. Share your story. If we're worried about an audience, we can only have an audience if we share our story. So um, the pitfalls I'm seeing is, one, pick up that pen and do it. Pick up that pencil and do it. So I kind of mentioned that. Just write. Go for it. Right. Don't put any expectations on yourself. Just do it for yourself. And then if you want to do it for other people, then go through that process and share what you have with the world, because anything we write, and this is why I say all of us can write, anything we put down, we're putting it down on paper for a reason, and it's magnificent, and it's got something for everyone, right? We can all learn from each other. We all are a community, really. So, write, do your best, take your time. There's never any rush, and share your story.
That's amazing, man. So like people, they fall in love with the product or the end product, but they don't fall in love with the process. People are just trying to take shortcuts and streamline. They just want to get to the end result, get to the product, as opposed to, well, the growth, the person you become, the whole writing is rewriting. And I can tell you, I'm sure people who've experienced this when it comes to editing, when it comes to essay writing, I'm sure it's very painful. It's painful, man. It's like you physically feel something in your stomach every time you look at your paper. You're like, oh, what's the right word? And then this, then the other. Oh, can I say this? Amazing, man. Like, that's a good point. So done is, again, I appreciate the shout out, but again, I can't take all the credit. I got that from another source talking about done is better than perfect. I think people, when they strive for perfection, it's just a recipe for disaster, because at the end of the day, I remember Sister Saiha mentioned practice makes perfect. I remember if you want to kind of go back at it, it's like if practice makes perfect, but nobody's perfect, then why practice? Right? So that's what people say. So at the end of the day, yeah. Oh,
can I jump in there, Mohammed? Like, sure. I mean, we understand that none of us are perfect, but we always want to be better. It's in our deen to be better, to always strive to be better, right? So just because we can't be perfect doesn't mean we should stop practicing.
100%, Sister Saha. Not a knock on you or anything like that, but like when people are saying, it's like you want to continuously strive for, as they say. Don't tell me what's it called? Don't tell me the sky's the limit when there are footprints on the moon, right? So people, the higher you go, the higher you aim, the better you're gonna be, right? If you aim low, then you're gonna get low. If you aim high and you fall a bit back, then you're gonna be in good shape. So I think that speaks to what Masha, were saying.
Quote that you said, the second part, nobody's perfect, so why practice? And it's such a defeatist line. Like, don't make excuses for yourself. Do try. Like you said, don't make the sky the limit, especially if you are scientific and quantify the sky as the atmosphere. Like, there's so much beyond the atmosphere. Go and say the stars are the limit. Stars go on forever. So don't be a defeatist.
I don't think there are footprints on Saturn.
Just keep going and try. Yes, you have to try, because nobody got anywhere without trying.
Yeah, exactly. You miss 100% of the shots. We can go off all these different these quotes, but Masha, I really like. I think it all boils down to one singular thing, which is, I think you mentioned the word defeatist, right? That defeatist, you just throw your hand, you throw in the towel before you even start. Like, why? I mean, give it an adequate effort. You pray to Allah. I mean, we're Muslims, man. We gotta rely on the Creator to say, look, I'll do my best and leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why just give up right away? Like, just like that. Why throw in the towel when you haven't given a fair shake? And sometimes some people, you've seen it over and over again. People, they haven't gotten their first book published like in many years, but if they're really holding strong to it, then you're good to go. So that's amazing. Now, as we're winding a bit down with this whole, man, I love this conversation. I just wish it could go on forever. But as we're winding down, wanted to kind of touch on some resources that may be out there. Sister Saliha, if I could take it to you. I know you mentioned, mashallah, My Voice. That was the organization that you're a part of. Anything out there? Let's just say there's someone who wants to be a writer, somebody who's saying, I need some help. I need some guidance. Where am I going to go? I mean, I love the idea of writing. Fine. I'm all fired up, ready to rumble, but I need some help. What do I do? What are some resources that you could point to that's been tremendously helpful, that you've seen in your own personal life, and maybe some things that you've seen others based on your experience that's really been instrumental in their success?
Your English teacher. I know people don't like school and they don't like homework and they often don't get along with their teachers, but I got my start with my English teachers. My grade 9 English teacher used to work at the Toronto Star. Like, how many times do you get access to somebody with that much experience? And how many times do you get access to somebody who just has that much knowledge and, like, not to repeat myself, but experience. And experience is so valuable. Like I said, perspective is valuable. So go to your teachers and write the essays and write the class essays and do it well. And if you're lost, go to your teacher again and ask, how can I do it well? To go back to an earlier point, a writer, what's the point in writing if your words don't matter? So Brother Amir said this as well. Writers need to know that their words matter. And my point is that writers need to know that there will be a reader at the end, somebody who's willing to listen. So you ask your teacher, what can I do to make this piece better? What can I do to make this more engaging for a reader? And what can I do to make this piece go beyond this classroom? Because that's how you're going to grow as a writer. Practice does make perfect. Write the essays, write the creative fiction assignments that your teacher tells you to write. Do it. And when you leave, there's an editor on the team that we just onboarded who has been writing for like 7 different publications. And she got 7 different publications, I think, starting early 2020, early lockdown, very early lockdown. Her teacher told her 2019, I think you should take this essay that you wrote for class and submit it to the Toronto Star. She did. The Toronto Star took it. So write for school, write for your teachers and get feedback and take that feedback into account and then publish. There are magazines like My Voice, and there are 2 other Muslim magazines that I'm aware of. And I'm sure if you searched up Muslim magazine, Muslim author, Muslim writer, and any hashtag on any social media, you'll find at least one magazine is using that platform to get their word out. And you'll find some of those magazines have open submissions. And so you can submit, depending on their guidelines, as soon as possible. If you want to write and you think that you are ready to write for a larger audience than just your teacher, then write and submit. And something that My Voice does is we give the articles to our team of editors and we start an open discussion with the author. So we don't want to just publish without the author say so. Oh, you gave it to us, therefore we're going to run with it in every possible direction and we'll publish the copy that we like. Our editor instead sits down with the author and says, we want to get your point across in the best way possible. Work with us to make that happen. And the editor and the author will go back and forth until they come to an agreement. This is the version of the article that I think would best be suited for a national audience. And they do that instead to get the best version of the author's word out there and to get the readers engaged in and invested every time.
Amazing, mashallah. So that's really cool. It's not like it's a two-way street. I think some people, they think, oh, I just publish it, just throw it up there and pray that people read it, and you don't know, like, how am I supposed to know if
I'm a bit biased because I do a lot of editing, but I would say one of your greatest friends is an editor. always get an editor. There are a lot of people who don't have editors, but for me, it's just like always get an editor. Even if you have to get a free friend, a beta reader, or just the smartest kid in your English classroom, get them to proofread before you submit and get an editor.
All right, so folks, if you didn't get that, get an editor. That's the idea, mashallah. I'll take it to you, brother Amir. I know experience is the best teacher. I get it. I think we all get it. I think everybody is excited about it. But let's just say, well assuming the basic, like bottom, like, someone who's just learned how to pick up a pencil, and they're like, they're terrified, petrified of trying to write something down. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna put a paragraph together on my own. Oh my goodness. Like, is there anything else out there, Masha? You got your English teachers, you got folks. I'm wondering, because now we're living in this whole self-taught, self-education world, YouTube channels, resource. What would you say is something that has helped you out? Something that would be tremendously useful for someone who is just really like starting from the ground up.
Of course, I'd like to start by thanking Sister Salah as an English teacher. I really appreciate your response, especially the beginning part. So when you ask for resources, etc., I actually pulled this from my bookshelf right over here. It's called The Artist's Way by an author named Julia Cameron, and this is a book that was gifted to me, and there's one thing in there that I think is really great, and I recommend it to all my students. I recommend it to anyone that wants to write. In the morning, we all wake up. I'm not a morning person in general. I'm a little bit groggy in the morning. We all kind of are. But what I recommend to everyone, and this is something that I learned about in this book, is something called morning pages. What morning pages is, we wake up, grab your coffee, grab your chocolate milk. I like chocolate milk. Grab your chocolate milk, eat your fruit, and then sit down and write something. Write 2 to 3 pages, anything and everything that's on your mind. And what this kind of does, it's almost like you're journaling. It can be a journal. It doesn't need to be. It could be something creative, right? But the point is, just sit down, take 10, 15, 20 minutes to just write 2 to 3 pages about anything that you may think about, or anything that may come to your mind. And what you're basically doing is you're filtering the morning brain. You're filtering the gunk that's holding you back, that's intimidating you from putting that pen or pencil to paper, right? By filtering all of these thoughts, you can throw all of that out after you finish writing it, then grab a new piece of paper if you want to think about creative writing, and get to it, right? You've already done your filtering. You can get to your actual, sit down, I'm going to write this out. I'm going to write this for keeps, right? Or maybe something through your filtration process, through the morning pages, you see something that really resonated with you, something that you really want to share, and you can write about that. Now, if you don't have time, you don't necessarily have to do 2 to 3 pages. You could do a page just in the morning, sometime early, when you have a second. Just sit down, write about anything. It doesn't have to be good. The spelling doesn't have to be appropriate. Grammar doesn't have to be appropriate. The point is, you're just filtering your brain. You're filtering your mind. Then once you have that blank screen, just write, right? Writing is a process. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be great the first time. If it is, mashallah, alhamdulillah, great. But the moment you start writing, you're going to come back to it anyways. So just go for it. I mean, I know it sounds overly simplistic, but that's really what it is. Just give it a shot. Give it a go.
Yeah, man. Easier said than done sometime. But look at that. The Artist's Way. That's the book that you recommend. All right. So there you go. That's a resource for folks out there who may want to get a perspective and, kind of have that step-by-step idea of what works in terms of what people can do to begin the writing process. Now, I hate to do this. I hate to say it, but all good things must come to an end. Especially, man, with this show, like I'm telling you, when I meet the guests and I have all these amazing conversations, you wish you can go on well beyond, but we gotta put a bow tie to everything or a ribbon on everything. So at this point, it'd be remiss if we didn't have parting words from our 2 guests. Sister Saliha, if I can kindly ask you, let's say there's a sister who's watching this right now, and she's petrified, she's scared, she's terrified. She hasn't really come to the realization that her words matter, and that it is super empowering to actually put thoughts down to paper. If you could offer your greatest piece of advice for any aspiring writer, what would you say to her to really get her to pursue this or really make most of it, maybe not professionally, but at the same time, could be just something like in the writing world? What would you say?
I got I didn't want to say my start, but it was like a high school creative fiction start. In NaNoWriMo, it's a national November writing month. Oh, look, that's my other thing.
Yeah.
So one, NaNoWriMo, if you're looking for a quiet start, if you're saying there's a sister who doesn't really believe that they're a writer, they're looking for like something to just get words down, NaNoWriMo is a really good avenue to just getting words down. And then it's a community of writers at the same time, and hopefully they can all help you to get a plot, a character, setting, books, words, and inshallah that will be the start that you need. Even it's just a silent start. You don't even have to tell anyone. A silent start to being an author, because NaNoWriMo is all about word count, essentially. And to the picture that was just shown, I also have a publishing company, or I am curious and interested in starting one if I get the readers to show me that they are interested in, to write. So you can write for NaNoWriMo, and it's just private and personal and quiet, and you can get a start there. And if you think that you're a little bit beyond that and you want to go further, you can write for My Voice in a nonfiction capacity. My Voice also takes fiction, by the way. Or you can write for The Salty Sticks in a fiction capacity. There's something out there for everyone, especially if you want to write for a Muslim audience or a non-Muslim audience. There's something out there for everyone.
All right, Salty Sticks. Oh my gosh, there's a story behind that, I presume. But that's a nice name. Okay, that's wonderful. So NaNoWriMo.
NaNoWriMo.
Okay. All right, there you go. It's almost
National
like, you know, finding
Writing Month.
NaNoWriMo, or it's like an enemy, right? Like from Finding Nemo. So I got that. Like anyway, so you got it, mashallah. So that's a good. I like that silent start. You don't have to brawl, like, you know, you shout from the rooftops and, you know, make a nice giant Facebook post and telling everybody, you know what, here I come, this is the world. Okay, so make it a silent start. Let your actions or let your words speak for itself. That's amazing, mashallah. Good.
And the community is very helpful. The community of people itself is just very positive,
encouraging, wonderful,
in my experience.
Great. So there are people always, you know, trying to cheer each other on. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Now to close the curtain, brother Amir, mashallah, there's a brother who's just like, you know, wanting to sink his teeth into writing. He wants to jump in and but has absolutely no idea what to do, absolutely no idea where to begin. And if you have your like golden piece of advice for this brother to be, you know, like you pursuing this writing endeavor, either professionally or not, just getting into the habit of writing, what would you say to him to really make that happen?
I'd like to start by saying there's another resource. I think it's called Inkpop, which is very similar, where you go online and you can write your stories and you can have your silent start. But if I had to, if there was any advice that I could give, I'd like to start by saying that I can't do any writing for you. It needs to come from you. So my very simple, golden, if you want to call it that, advice is believe in yourself and be yourself, and that's it. Right? Believe in yourself and be yourself. Because if you are being who you are and you're believing in your thoughts and you're putting them on paper, then I can almost guarantee you always there's going to be something meaningful on your. Be yourself and believe in yourself.
Man, oh man, you're not expecting some sort of like get a nice sharpener when you're writing it. No, man, it's all about confidence. It's internal. It's all about the intangibles. Amazing, amazing. I mean, what a way to cap it off. What a uplifting message. Brother Amir, sister Saliha, thank you both. Thanks a million for this wonderful conversation. It's very refreshing and reinvigorating to hear folks who really take writing to heart and see the value in it. In a society, in a world where pictures are dominating, it's equally important to know that there are words that were put in place in order to articulate those images. So thank you both, brother Amir, sister Saliha. Much appreciated for your contributions.
Having us.
Yeah.
Jazakallah khair, Muhammad.
Well, yeah. I'm going to talk to the audience for a quick second here. Now, when it comes to the whole situation in terms of what writing is all about. Now, with writing, there's this really amazing quote by John Greenleaf Whittier. And this is back in the 1800s. So I'm going to take you a couple hundred years, but his words are timeless. He says, "Of all sad words of tongue or pen, the saddest are these, it might have been." Of all sad words of tongue or pen, the saddest are these, it might have been. Do we really want to go through life knowing or that we didn't have a chance at what we could accomplish? Did we really want to go through life not trying at least something special? You know, Shakespeare has really changed the world with the written word. He didn't produce a movie that just was sold blockbusters. He wrote words, and those words translated to things on the screen. Those words translated into the play, but it all began with the word. And so we want to make sure that we honor those words. You know, the more you write and the more you exercise that writing muscle, the clearer you'll think. There's that relationship there. The clearer you think, the clearer you write. They have that one-to-one. So again, just to wrap up here, to say thank you all so much for having this conversation, for joining our conversation today. Tune in on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, this is your host, Brother Muhammad Maxwell Hassan. Stay strong, stay safe, and stay proud to be Muslims. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.